According to their files, I was dead, but files know nothing about the woman who just opened the courtroom door. The click of the latch silenced the entire legal team, and the man who was once my husband, the one who orchestrated this, looked at me and crumpled like a broken chair. I didn't return to embrace anyone. I returned to pull the pin on a legal landmine they set themselves. My name is Vanessa Hunter. I am 34 years old. Though the state of California believes I died at sea roughly 8 weeks ago, I am the founder and, until my recent demise, the chief executive officer of Luminarch Labs, a data security firm I built from nothing. Luminarch is my life's work. It is an entity dedicated to protecting secrets, to building digital fortresses. It is structured, logical, and clean. My family, it turns out, is none of those things. Today, I am standing in the oppressively silent, beige-carpeted hallway of the Cypress County Superior Court in Grayport. The air smells like industrial cleaner and stale anxiety. I am officially a ghost, presumed lost in the deep waters off the coast, a tragic footnote in the financial pages. But ghosts don't carry compressed document tubes. I pull the brim of the dark blue baseball cap lower, obscuring my face. My hair is different, shorter, stripped of its usual color, but the disguise is mostly psychological. People see what they expect to see, and no one expects to see me. They expect a resolution. They expect a division of assets. Through the wired glass of the courtroom door, I can see the circus. Department 4B, my own probate hearing, fast-tracked by lawyers who smell billable hours and a massive payout. The media is here. They call it the Luminarch Legacy Hearing. They whisper about the estate, about the shares I held, a controlling interest valued at hundreds of millions of dollars. They speculate whether the company, my company, will be fractured, sold off in pieces by the grieving family who now controls it. Grieving, that's the word they use. I watch them inside. They are not grieving. They are negotiating. My family, my loved ones, are divided into 3 distinct strategic camps, 3 warring tribes waiting to carve up the buffalo. On the left, near the jury box, sit my parents, Gordon and Elaine Hunter. My mother is wearing a charcoal gray suit, perfectly tailored, her expression fixed in a mask of dignified sorrow. It's the same expression she wore when my high school acceptance letter was for the wrong university. My father, Gordon, sits beside her, tapping his polished shoe impatiently. He looks less like a bereaved father and more like a man waiting for a delayed flight that owes him significant compensation. They are here for their share, the share they believe they are owed for the burden of my ambition. On the right, closer to the exit, is my younger brother, Tyler. He looks terrible. His suit is rumpled. His face is slick with a sheen of cold sweat. Tyler, who I put through college, who I gave a pointless, high-paying marketing job at Luminarch to keep him out of trouble. He's clutching a briefcase as if it holds the nuclear codes. But I know Tyler. He's the weak link. He's the liability. He's here to claim his part. The part he's always felt was unfairly overshadowed by mine. And in the center, at the main defendant's table, sits Kellen Royce, my husband. Kellen looks magnificent in his grief. His dark hair is perfectly cut. His navy suit is bespoke. His tie a somber, respectful shade of blue. He is the picture of the tragic widower, the man left to pick up the pieces of a brilliant life cut short. His lawyers, 3 of them, surround him like Secret Service agents. He is the main event. He is the one who holds the claim of matrimony. I press my forehead against the cool glass for a second, my breath fogging a small circle. My heart is not racing, it is pounding, a slow, heavy, metronomic beat. It feels less like an organ and more like a clock, counting down the seconds until detonation. The image of the courtroom dissolves, replaced by a flash of violent, dark water. The memory isn't hazy. It's burned into me. The shriek of the storm, the 40-knot winds hitting the sail, and a sound that didn't belong, a high-pitched, metallic skipping sound, like a gear slipping under pressure. It was the winch, the mainsail winch. I remember reaching for my life vest. the heavy-duty storm gear I always insisted on. I remember the feel of the clasp, and I remember the thin, almost surgical slice along the seam, right where the bladder was designed to inflate. It wasn't wear and tear, it was a cut. Then, the shadow, a dark shape on the slick deck, moving near the mast line just before the boom swung wildly, unnaturally. The shadow was low, solid. It was a shape I recognized. My heartbeat thumps in the present. Boom, boom, boom. Each beat is a secret. Each beat is a piece of evidence. Each beat is a lie they told. I pull back from the window. The document tube in my hand feels dense, heavier than its few ounces of paper and plastic. It contains my resurrection. Inside the courtroom, the arguments are heating up. The sound is muffled, but the gestures are clear. Kellen's lead lawyer, a shark named Harrison, is holding up a document. Even from here, I know what it is. They are arguing about the emergency proxy authorization, a document supposedly signed by me, dated 2 days before the sailing trip, granting Kellen sweeping temporary powers over my Luminarch shares in the event of my incapacity. My signature, my intent, my alleged wish. Ms. Hunter was under tremendous stress. Harrison's voice cuts through the door as a clerk opens it to exit. She knew the risks of that trip. She wanted her husband, her partner, to ensure the stability of her legacy. My parents' lawyer objects. Tyler's lawyer objects. They aren't objecting to the fraud. They are objecting to the percentage. They are arguing that the proxy is invalid. Not because I didn't sign it. They all seem to accept that fiction. But because it overrides their own claims as blood relatives. They are fighting over a forgery, a clumsy one, at that. I look down at the tube in my hand. It contains the real signature analysis. It contains the real timeline. I did not survive the storm by accident. I survived because the woman who found me, 60 miles down the coast, knew how to treat hypothermia and a clean knife wound. I survived because they failed to check the emergency beacon I kept stitched into my gear, separate from the boat's main transmitter. They thought I was dead. They only needed to wait out the clock. I adjust the cap one last time. My hand is steady as I reach for the heavy, polished wooden handle of the courtroom door. I push. The door swings open with a heavy, expensive whoosh, cutting off Harrison mid-sentence. The air conditioning, the sound of shuffling papers, the muttered arguments, it all stops. The sound in the room vanishes, sucked into the vacuum of my arrival. It takes 3 full seconds for the room to process what it is seeing. A few journalists in the back row, the ones with the cameras, see me first. Their eyes widen. A lens cap clatters to the floor. Then Tyler. He's facing the door. His gaze lifts, sluggish from stress, and then it focuses. The blood drains from his face, leaving a waxy, yellow-gray pallor. His mouth opens, but nothing comes out. He drops his pen. My mother, Elaine, turns next, annoyed by the interruption. She sees me. Her perfectly manicured hand, the one wearing the ring I bought her, flies to her throat, clutching the pearls. She makes a small, strangled sound, like a bird being stepped on. Gordon just freezes, his face a mask of utter blank confusion. Kellen is the last to turn. He's annoyed. He's the star of this show. And I've interrupted his monologue. He turns his head slowly, his eyes full of impatience. He sees me. He recognizes me. The color doesn't just drain from his face, it disappears, like a light being switched off. His eyes, the eyes I once trusted, widen in pure, unadulterated horror. This isn't the shock of a miracle. It is the terror of a failed execution. He tries to speak. Van. He pushes his chair back, trying to stand. He is stumbling, reeling, as the outline said. His body suddenly disconnected from his brain. His legs, the strong legs I'd seen on the tennis court, buckle. He doesn't just sit back down. He collapses. He hits the counsel table, scattering legal pads and glasses of water, and then he slides, boneless, to the floor. A woman in the gallery screams. The heavy thud of his body hitting the floor echoes in the sudden, dead silence. I take one step into the room, letting the heavy door swing shut behind me. I look past my parents, past my brother, past the crumpled heap of my husband on the floor. I look directly at the judge. I survived, and I brought the mind map. 60 days ago, I woke up tasting salt and rust. The room was round, small, and smelled of old rope, mildew, and strong antiseptic. My head throbbed with a dull, heavy ache. I was not in the water. I was in a narrow cot, covered by a scratchy wool blanket that felt like it could stand up on its own. Light streamed in through a thick, curved window, illuminating a spiral of dusty iron stairs. A woman was sitting in a simple wooden chair, watching me. She was older, perhaps in her late 60s, with a face mapped by sun and wind. Her eyes were the color of the sea on a cloudy day, and they held no pity, only a quiet, assessing patience. "You're at the Ashmere Light," she said, her voice gravelly, accustomed to being projected over the sound of wind. "I'm May Corbett. I run this station." I tried to sit up, but a bolt of pain shot from my shoulder down to my ribs. I fell back, gasping. "Easy," she said, not moving to help me. "You've been out for almost a day. You're hypothermic, dehydrated, and you've lost some blood from that gash on your scalp. But you'll live." Fragments returned, the scream of the wind, the deck slick with spray, the high-pitched skipping of the winch, the shadow. How did I get here? "I found you at dawn, clinging to the channel marker buoy in the outer bay," May explained, gesturing to the window. "I was checking the light after the storm. You were unconscious. You're lucky I spotted you. Luckier still you held on. That vest of yours was useless." I looked down. I was wearing a thick flannel shirt and sweatpants, not my own. "My vest? It must have torn." "It didn't tear," she said flatly. She stood, walked over to a hook by the door, and took down my heavy-duty storm vest. The bright orange fabric was stained with salt. She brought it to me and ran a calloused finger along a seam on the right side. "A tear phrase, child. It rips. This," she said, pulling the fabric taut, "is a slice. It was done with a hot blade. Most likely. See how the nylon is melted? It seals the edges. You wouldn't even see it unless you were looking for it. Someone didn't want you floating." A coldness, far deeper than the oceans, flooded my body. A hot blade, a slice, the shadow on the deck. May watched me absorb this, her expression unchanging. "The sea brings all sorts to my door. Some are running from the law. Some are running from themselves. Some, like you, are running from someone else." She went back to her chair. "I have no radio that reaches the mainland easily. Storm knocked out my primary comms, but I have an old cell phone. It gets 1 bar, maybe 2, if you stand by the lens." She offered me a flip phone that looked like it belonged in a museum. "Battery lasts a week," she said, as if it were a miracle of modern technology. "Thank you, May," I whispered. My throat was raw. I'm Anna. I was a deckhand on a private charter. We had a fight." May nodded slowly, accepting the lie. "All right, Anna, you rest. When you're ready, I'll drive you to the bus station on the mainland. It's a 2-hour trip." She left the room, her boots heavy on the iron steps. I waited until I heard a clang below. Then I powered on the phone. It took a full minute to boot up. 1 bar flickered, then held. I opened the rudimentary browser. I typed my name, Vanessa Hunter. The screen filled with headlines. "Tragedy at sea. Luminark founder Vanessa Hunter presumed lost. Coast Guard calls off search." They had stopped looking for me after 36 hours. 36 hours. Kellen, the article said, was too distraught to join the search, but had generously pledged a $1 million donation to the Coast Guard families in my name. Then I saw it, a Society page article from the Greyport Gazette, dated 3 days ago. Kellen Royce, grieving widower, makes first public appearance. He was at a charity gala. He was standing next to Maris Hallow, my foundation's chief advisor. He was holding a champagne flute, raising it in a toast, and he was smiling. It was not a sad smile. It was not a brave smile. It was a smile of utter, profound relief, a smile that said, "Job done." Maris had her hand possessively on his arm, her own smile triumphant. He wasn't honoring me, he was replacing me. The shock in my body solidified into ice, the pain in my ribs, the throb in my head. It all vanished, replaced by a singular, cold clarity. This was not an accident. This was a data breach. My life was the server, and my family was the virus. I spent another day with May, regaining my strength, eating her thick, nourishing stew. I told her I needed to disappear for a while. She asked no questions. She drove me to the mainland, to a small town 2 hours south of Greyport. She gave me a spare coat and $200 in cash. "Don't trust the ones who smile too easy, Anna," she said, and drove away. My first stop was a gas station. I bought a burner SIM card. My next stop was a public library. I used their computer to access one of my old secondary accounts, a blind trust I'd set up years ago for rainy day R&D projects. It was separate from Luminarch, separate from my joint accounts with Kellen. I was the only one with access. Or so I thought. The transaction log was clean, except it was not. For the past 4 months, there had been small weekly transfers, $10,000 here, $15,000 there, always just under the standard $10,000 reporting threshold to avoid automatic flags. They were all going to the same recipient, a shell corporation, Cobalt Finch LLC, registered in Larkridge, a landlocked town known for nothing but outlet malls. I knew I could not use any of my corporate lawyers. They were compromised. They were part of Kellen's world. I needed someone clean, someone detached, someone hungry. I remembered a name from an acquisition dispute 2 years prior, Iris Vale, a junior partner at Wren & Pike in Chicago. She was meticulous, she was aggressive, and during that negotiation, I'd seen her surgically dismantle a CEO who reminded me, quite a bit, of Kellen. I went to a laundromat, the smell of bleach thick in the air. I put the new SIM in May's old phone. I called Iris. "Iris Vale." Her voice was sharp, all business. "Ms. Vale, my name is Vanessa Hunter. You will believe I am dead. I am not." 10 seconds of pure, unbroken silence on the line. I could hear her breathing. "This is an unusual request, Ms. Hunter. Is it Iris? Or is it just a high-stakes data recovery problem? The data is my life. The breach is my family. I need my systems locked down. You're my firewall." Another pause. "I'll need a retainer of $100,000. "It's already in the account I'm emailing you the details for," I said. "Check it." I heard typing, a sharp intake of breath. "Okay, I'm your firewall. What's the first vector?" "Cobalt Finch LLC. I want to know who owns it, where its money comes from, and where it goes. I want to know who was at the Greyport Marina on the night of my accident, and I want you to find the best forensic document examiner in the country. I need you to be my ghost." "Understood," Iris said. Her voice was pure steel. I moved from the motel to a nondescript extended-stay hotel. I bought a new laptop, paid in cash. I set up encrypted emails. I became a digital wraith, feeding Iris leads while she used her firm's resources to pull the threads. The first thread, the marina. Iris's investigator pulled the official nautical charts and meteorological data from the Greyport Marina control tower. The data was chilling. There was a storm, but the wind gust that supposedly caused the accident, it hit at exactly 8:14 p.m., and the automated log from my yacht, the Ark, showed the main sail winch failing at exactly 8:14 p.m. It wasn't a failure. It was timed, sabotaged to fail under maximum load. The second thread, Tyler, I asked Iris to pull all CCTV footage from the marina. The place is covered in security. Tyler, in his marketing role, had overseen the PR for our anniversary trip, ensuring the press knew about it. The footage came in, and there, on a loading bay camera, time-stamped at 6 p.m., was Tyler. He was supposed to be in Denver at a conference. He'd even sent me a selfie that morning from the stage, but he was here. He was in Grayport, handing a slim briefcase to a man in technician's overalls. The third thread? My parents. While Iris worked, I ran my own checks. I looked up the public property records for my parents' home, the house in Northbridge, the one I had paid off for them. They had just taken out a massive short-term mortgage against it, a bridge loan. The interest rate was a predatory 20%, a rate no one would accept unless they knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that a 9-figure windfall was guaranteed. They were borrowing against my death. Iris delivered the final pieces 4 days ago. Cobalt Finch LLC was funded by transfers from an account at Aurelian Bank, an account opened by Kellen Royce, using a proxy. The money from Cobalt Finch, over $200,000 in total, was paid out to a specific marine technician, a specialist in custom rigging and unsanctioned modifications, a man known to make problems, or create them. The money chain was complete. Kellen paid the technician via the shell company. Tyler provided the physical access. My parents provided the moral justification, waiting like vultures to pick the bones. I called Iris, my voice shaking with a rage so cold it burned. "We go to the police. We go public. Now." "No," Iris said, her voice sharp, cutting through my fury. "You do that, and they scatter. Kellen's lawyers will tie this up in criminal court for a decade. The evidence is strong, but it's circumstantial. They'll claim you're unstable, traumatized. They'll say Tyler was just paying a vendor. They'll say your parents are just bad with money." "Then what, Iris?" I yelled into the phone, standing in my sterile hotel room. "What do we do?" "We let them walk into the trap. They've convened a probate hearing. They are about to commit perjury, on the record, to steal your company. They are going to present fraudulent documents to a superior court judge. Don't report the crime. Vanessa, let them commit it. In public. Let them sign their own indictments, right in front of the judge. It's cleaner, it's faster, and it's irreversible." My family never had a religion. We had a ledger. We grew up in Northbridge, in a cramped 3-bedroom house where the wallpaper was peeling and the foundation was settling. Much like the ambitions of my parents, the walls were thin. We heard every late-night argument about interest rates, every whispered resentment about a neighbor's new car. My parents, Gordon and Elaine Hunter, were survivalists of the middle class. They weren't cruel people, not in the active sense. They were just pathologically pragmatic. Their core philosophy, the closest thing our house had to a commandment, was that success was the only measurable form of morality. To be poor, to struggle, was not just unfortunate, it was a character flaw. To be successful, to have money, was to be good. I was the first to show signs of being good. I was driven, not just by a desire to build, but by a desperate need to escape the sound of those thin walls. I was the one who managed the household budget while my parents worked retail management. I was the one who practically raised Tyler, my brother, who was 5 years younger and learned early that charm was an acceptable substitute for effort. I collected academic scholarships, hoarding them like survival rations, and got out. I started Luminarc Labs in a rented 2-car garage in a bad part of the city. The wiring was faulty, and the roof leaked when it rained. But it was mine. It was a fortress. I coded for 18 hours a day, fueled by cheap coffee and the terror of ever going back to Northbridge. When the company hit, it hit hard. The Series A funding round made the financial news. I wasn't just Vanessa anymore. I was Tech's new titan, and to my family, I wasn't just their daughter. I was their winning lottery ticket. I remember my mother visiting my first real office. She didn't look at the server racks or the encryption protocols I was designing. She looked at the square footage, the glass walls, the expensive leather chairs. "It's just wonderful, Vanessa," she said, taking a delicate sip of the champagne I'd ordered. "Your father and I are so proud. Truly. Now, we should probably discuss your repayment." I stopped. "My repayment? Mom, I paid off the house. I bought you the new car." "For the upbringing, dear," she said. her smile never faltering. "The foundation, the stability. We invested everything in you. It's only fair we see a return on that investment." It was not a request, it was an invoice. So, I put them on the payroll, under a consulting fee. When that wasn't enough, I began assigning them small tranches of non-voting shares. It was easier than the phone calls. It was easier than the guilt. Then came Tyler. He drifted through the college I paid for, leveraging the family name I'd built to get into parties, but not classes. "Give him a job. Van," my father insisted. "He's your brother. It's family." I created a position for him. Marketing and public relations. It was a safe container, or so I thought. He was meant to manage event sponsorships and press releases, but Tyler didn't want a job. He wanted a title. He was constantly overstepping his authority, demanding access to client data, trying to sit in on board meetings. "I should be a VP, Van," he'd complain. "I'm your brother. It looks weird. Me just being a marketing drone." "You get to be a VP, Tyler," I told him, "when you understand what the V stands for." Into this carefully balanced ecosystem of resentment and entitlement walked Kellen Royce. I met him at a technology gala. He was handsome, charismatic, and ran a boutique import-export business that always seemed to be on the verge of a massive breakthrough. He was the only person in the room who didn't want to talk to me about data security. He wanted to talk to me about art, about sailing, about a trip he'd taken to Patagonia. He was a relief. He was polished where my family was rough. He seemed self-made, where they were simply self-interested. We were married 18 months later. I am a security expert. I believe in firewalls. My lawyers drafted the most ironclad prenuptial agreement they could devise. My assets, specifically the entirety of my Luminarch holdings, were mine. His assets, his perpetually on the verge business, were his. It was clean. It was logical. Kellen signed it with a flourish and a laugh. "It's just paper. Van, I'm marrying you, not your stock certificate. You have to protect what you built." He was so supportive, until he wasn't. The shift began about 3 months after the wedding. I was in my home office late one night, reviewing encryption audits. He leaned against the doorframe, a glass of wine in his hand. "You know," he said casually, "I was looking at your board composition. It's all tech guys and VCs. It lacks a certain strategic perspective." I kept my eyes on the screen. "What kind of perspective?" "Business development, high-level mergers, someone who can operate outside the tech bubble, someone you trust implicitly, someone—" He paused. "Like me." I turned my chair to face him. I kept my voice perfectly flat. "No." His smile tightened. "Just a fraction." "No? That's it? Just no?" "Kellen, it's a conflict of interest. A massive one. My husband on my board. It undermines my authority with my investors. It blurs the lines we agreed to keep clear. Luminarch is mine. Your business is yours. That was the deal." He stared at me for a long moment, the charm evaporating, replaced by a cold, calculating assessment. Then the mask was back. "Of course. You're right. Conflict of interest. I get it. Just trying to help." He didn't have to push. He had my family for that. The following Sunday, at our obligatory family dinner, the ambush was set. "We heard you turned Kellen down," my father started, not looking up from his plate. "For the board seat." "It's humiliating, Vanessa," my mother added, her voice sharp. "People talk. You treat your own husband like he's an intern." "And what about me?" Tyler chimed in, his voice rising in that familiar whining cadence. "I'm still booking golf tournaments. Van, I should be a vice president. We're your family." My father pointed his fork at me. "A husband without a seat, a brother without a title. You're making the family look weak. Vanessa, you're hoarding. It's not a good look." I looked at the three of them, my parents and my brother, and I saw it. They weren't just complaining. They were aligned. They saw Kellen not as my husband, but as their new, powerful ally, another claimant to the throne. Kellen, to his credit, never mentioned the board seat again. He became the perfect supportive husband. He was the one who suggested the anniversary trip, a 3-day sail. Just us, he'd said. Away from the board, away from your family, just us and the ocean. We need to reconnect. He let Tyler handle the shore arrangements. He framed it as a gesture of goodwill, a way to give Tyler the responsibility he craved. I'm handling all the PR, Tyler announced, puffed up with self-importance. Making sure the press knows about the anniversary sale, and I'm coordinating directly with port security. Making sure you two have total privacy. No one gets near your slip without my clearance. He was overseeing the security manifest. He was creating a sterile, controlled zone. I saw it as him finally doing his job. I didn't see it as him creating a blind spot. In the week before the trip, small anomalies began. Glitches in the matrix that I, a data security expert, dismissed as human error. My personal storm-grade life vest, the one I'd used for 5 years, vanished from its locker on the yacht. It must be at the cleaners, Kellen said smoothly, replacing it with a brand new one, still in the plastic. Top of the line. You deserve an upgrade. I went to check the emergency comms, the secondary radio transceiver. The one I kept tuned to a private maritime channel was dead. The channel setting was wiped. Gremlins in the wiring, Kellen laughed, tapping the console. I had the technician Tyler hired take a look. He said it's fine, probably just a frequency reset. The technician, the man Tyler hired. I let it go. I was tired of fighting. I wanted to believe in the reconnection. The night before we sailed, my phone buzzed. A text from Kellen. Tomorrow. Let's just relax. No work talk, no family talk, just us. A request to lower my shields. A final check to ensure I was off guard. We had dinner, the 4 of us, at the penthouse overlooking Grayport Harbor. The mood was light, too light. My father raised his glass of whiskey. To Vanessa and Kellen, he said, his eyes finding Kellen's across the table. And to the future. I just hope, he added, a thin smile playing on his lips, that everything gets settled, soon, tidied up. Kellen raised his own glass. To a tidy future, Gordon. To a tidy future, my mother and Tyler echoed. I turned away from their toast, looking out the massive windows at the dark bay. The lights of the city glittered, but the water itself was a black void. A strange wind was picking up, rattling the glass. It was coming from the wrong direction for this time of year. A cold spike of adrenaline hit my stomach, a genuine, physical premonition of dread. I dismissed it. I called it stress. I turned back to my family, raised my glass, and toasted my own execution. My hotel room became a war room. The walls were covered in printouts, timelines, and sticky notes. Iris and I worked on a 24-hour cycle. Our communication, a rapid-fire exchange of encrypted data packets and short, precise calls. We were not just building a case. We were reverse engineering an execution. We were peeling an onion, and every layer reeked. The first layer was the money. Kellen was arrogant. Iris's voice crackled over the secure line. He thought he was clever, using a shell corporation, but Cobalt Finch LLC was sloppy. On my laptop screen, I had the timeline we'd built. It was a simple, brutal flowchart. Funds moved from Aurelian Bank, an offshore account Kellen controlled via a proxy, to Cobalt Finch. The transfer started 4 months ago. Small amounts, as I'd seen. Then, 72 hours before the sailing trip, a single, massive transfer, $250,000. That's the kill fee, I murmured, my fingers tracing the glowing arrow on the screen. That's the setup, Iris corrected. The money didn't sit. It was immediately routed out, but not to a bank account. He used an anonymous digital wallet, untraceable, usually. But not for us, I said. I had spent my life building systems to track digital footprints. I fed the wallet's alphanumeric string into a proprietary analysis program I'd built at Luminarch, running it through a private server. The program chewed on the data. It cross-referenced the wallet's transaction timestamps with known exchanges. It took 6 hours. A name popped up. Rafe Donnelly. Got him, I said. I sent the file to Iris. Rafe Donnelly, Iris said an hour later, having run the name through her own databases. He's not just a marine technician, he's an artist. He specializes in aftermarket customization. He makes things fail, undetectably. He's been investigated twice for insurance fraud, but nothing ever stuck. He's good. He's not good enough, I said. He got paid. That means he was physically present. Find him. Iris did better. I don't need to find him now. I just need to place him. I'm tasking a commercial satellite imagery request for the Grayport Marina, for the entire 48-hour window before your trip. The images came back, grainy but conclusive. At 3:05 a.m., the night before we sailed, a small, unmarked utility van was parked at the end of my slip. The slip that was supposed to be under Tyler's total privacy lockdown. The man who got out of the van matched Donnelly's driver's license photo. The next layer? The access. The van is one thing, I said to Iris. He couldn't have just walked onto the dock. He didn't, Iris replied. Her voice was tight. He had a guest pass, a temporary technician's badge. I already knew the answer. Issued by whom? The Port Authority log shows it was requested by your company, specifically by the marketing department, citing a last-minute audio-visual equipment check for the anniversary press coverage. It was authorized and signed out by Tyler Hunter. Tyler. He hadn't just looked the other way. He hadn't just been a liability. He had held the door open for the assassin. He handed over the key. The third layer, the motive. My death was profitable, but Kellen was impatient. Iris, pull my personal insurance policies, all of them. Already did, she said. Your main life insurance policy, the $50 million one, with Kellen as the sole beneficiary. He insisted on it after we got married, I said. Said it was responsible planning for the estate. Responsible planning, Iris said, her voice dripping acid. Doesn't usually involve quadrupling the payout. He raised the policy, Vanessa, to $200 million. I went cold. When? 12 days before the accident, he forged your digital signature on the approval form. The forgery, that brought us to the centerpiece of their entire courtroom strategy, the emergency proxy authorization, the document that gave Kellen control of my Luminark shares. They're going to present it, I said. It's the foundation of his claim. And we're going to shred it, Iris said. I have the high-resolution scan of the document from the court filing. I've sent it to the best, Dr. Elias Thorne at the Norwin Forensic Penmanship Institute. Dr. Thorne's report was a masterpiece of scientific takedown. The signature is a near-perfect forgery, Iris summarized, reading from his notes. The slant, the pressure, the spacing, it's based on a genuine signature, but the final stroke, the R in Hunter, the ink deposition shows a microscopic hesitation, a tremor of execution. The genuine Vanessa Hunter signs that stroke in a single, fluid upsweep. This, she paused, was drawn, not written. It's a fabrication. The chain was complete, a set of interlocking causal links. Kellen wanted the insurance money and the company. He paid Rafe Donnelly through the Cobalt Finch Shell Company. Tyler wanted his seat at the table. He provided the access, using his PR role to create the security badge that got Donnelly onto my yacht. My parents wanted their return on investment. They secured their bridge loan, so confident in my death that they were willing to sign at a 20% interest rate, leveraging the inheritance they were already counting. They were all in. Every single one of them had a hand on the knife. Now we build the weapon, I said. For 3 days, we collated. We assembled everything into what Iris called the disclosure package. It was not one file. It was 7, each one sealed, digitally and physically, to be opened in sequence. File 1, identity, my biometrics, my dental records, my medical history, and May Corbett's sworn affidavit. File 2, the forgery, Dr. Thorne's complete analysis of the proxy signature. File 3, the money, the complete, annotated timeline from Aurelian Bank to Cobalt Finch to Rafe Donnelly. File 4, The access, the marina camera logs, the satellite images, and the Port Authority record of the temporary pass issued by Tyler, File 5, the insurance, the policy increase, dated 12 days before the storm, File 6, the parents, the bridge loan agreement, with the inheritance clause highlighted, File 7, the conspiracy, the encrypted text messages we recovered from Tyler's cloud backup, discussing the technician with Kellen. "This is the payload," I said, looking at the 7 locked folders on my desktop. "This is the mind map." But it wasn't enough to just show up. I had to control the narrative inside my company. Kellen had been acting CEO for 60 days. I had to assume he was embedding his own people, purging my loyalists. Using my old, deep access credentials, the ones I had hard-coded into the system mainframe, known only to me, I bypassed the public servers. I sent a series of encrypted, delayed messages to the 3 largest non-family shareholders. The message was vague, cryptic. "A significant market correction event is imminent. Advise no action on Luminarch shares until a new data packet is presented. VH." It was a gamble, but these were people who had bet on me, not on my family. They would wait. It would sow confusion. It would keep them from pledging their shares to Kellen. Finally, I needed to know what Kellen had done in my office. I contacted Daniel Chavez, my internal controller. Daniel was a man of pure numbers. He was loyal not to people, but to the integrity of the ledger. My message to him was simple. I am alive. They are not. Pull the executive office access logs for the night before the storm. I need to know who was in my office after I left. Daniel didn't question it. He didn't ask for proof. The data arrived in my inbox 2 hours later. My office, the one secured by a biometric palm scanner, had been accessed at 1:07 a.m. My palm had been used. But I was on the boat, asleep, I whispered. "He must have lifted your print," Iris said. "From a glass, a doorknob. It's a classic." "But what did he take?" I scoured the logs. He hadn't accessed the mainframe. He hadn't touched the financials. "Wait," Iris said. "I'm running a deep recovery scan on the server backups for your legal counsel, the firm that represents Kellen now, the one that drafted your prenup." "What are you looking for?" "I'm looking for the document that was based on the proxy. The forgery was Phase 1. They must have a Phase 2. A file popped up. It was in a deleted folder, buried in the cache of Kellen's lead lawyer. Harrison. It was a draft. It was dated the day after my disappearance. It was a new last will and testament, in my name. It left 80% of Luminarch to Kellen, 10% to Tyler, and 10% to my parents. It was a complete fabrication, designed to be discovered in my personal safe, the safe Kellen had just gained access to, superseding all other agreements, including my ironclad prenup. They hadn't just tried to kill me. They had been building a new identity for me, a dead one, who agreed with everything they had ever wanted. The night of the storm, the air itself was a weapon. The wind didn't just blow, it shrieked, a solid wall of sound that vibrated in my teeth. The deck of the Ark was a treacherous landscape, slick with salt spray and the sweat of the ocean. Kellen was below, supposedly trying the main radio, leaving me to handle the sails. "It's just a squall. Van!" he had yelled, his voice tinny over the intercom. "The weather report said it would pass by 10. But this was no squall. This was a fist, and it was now 9:30. I was braced near the cockpit, fighting the wheel, when the first thing went wrong, the high-pitched, metallic skipping sound, the one I'd heard in my memory. It was the main winch, the one controlling the massive mainsail. Under the 40-knot gust, the line was screaming with tension. The winch was supposed to hold it. It wasn't holding. I heard the clack-clack-clack of the gear slipping, a sound that should be impossible on my boat. I had personally supervised the refit. Kellen had insisted on one last check by a specialist Tyler had recommended. "Just to be safe, honey," he'd said. "Kellen!" I screamed into the wind. "The winch is failing! I'm letting the sail luff. Get up here!" No answer, just the static of the intercom. The boat heaved violently, the booms swinging with terrifying force as the sail lost its tension. I needed to get forward, to manually release the line, but I wouldn't do it without a vest. I scrambled to the gear locker. My old reliable vest was gone. In its place was the new one, the one Kellen had bought, still smelling of plastic and factory chemicals. I ripped it from its packaging. It felt too light. As I struggled to zip it, my fingers, cold and wet, brushed against the right side seam. I felt it. A thin, perfectly straight separation in the stitching, just below the armhole. It wasn't a tear. It was a cut, a tiny, hair's-width line of separation, precise as a surgeon's blade. The wind was roaring, but my world went completely silent. The new vest, the dead radio, the slipping winch. This was a system, a program, and it was executing. I looked up. Forward, near the bow. A shadow moved. It was not Kellen. Kellen was tall, lean. This figure was shorter, thicker, dressed in dark, oil-slick black rain gear. It was crouched near the forestay. Then I heard it, a sound that cut through the wind's howl, the soft, distinct thud of a rubber-soled boot landing on a metal deck cleat. The figure was moving aft, towards me. The boat lurched again, a rogue wave slamming the hull. The shadow was thrown off balance. It was Rafe Donnelly, the technician. He wasn't supposed to be here. He was supposed to be on shore. He saw me see him. At that exact second, the main winch failed completely. The locking pin, the brand new, upgraded pin, must have sheared. The boom, a solid carbon fiber spar weighing 800 pounds, was released. It swung across the deck with the force of a wrecking ball, exactly where I had been standing. I dove sideways, not fast enough. The boom's end line snagged my leg, ripping me from my feet. I slid across the deck, the world tilting, a mess of salt water and shouting. I felt my head crack against the coaming, a sharp, white explosion of pain. Then I was in the water. The cold was indescribable. It was not water. It was a liquid vice, stealing my breath, my strength, my thoughts. I gasped, swallowing brine. The new, sliced-open vest did nothing. It filled with water, dragging me down. I was sinking. But as I fell, my hand, acting on pure, desperate instinct, clawed at the back of the storm gear I was wearing. Inside the collar, stitched into the lining, was my last firewall, a micro-tracker, waterproof, with its own power source. It was the size of a quarter. I ripped it free, my nails tearing, clutching the small, smooth disc in my fist. The yacht, the Ark, was already a ghost, disappearing into the curtain of black rain, its lights fading. Donnelly was on board. Kellen was on board. They were sailing away. The panic was a white-hot knife. I kicked, fighting the waterlogged vest, my head throbbing. I was going to die. Here, in the dark, alone. And then, something solid. My boot struck something hard, metallic. I reached out. My fingers found a chain, thick with barnacles. It was the channel marker, May's buoy, a steel island in the middle of nowhere. The waves were trying to rip me away, but I held on, my arms screaming. I saw the buoy's bell, silent in the wind, and its broad, flat top. With the last of my strength, I hauled myself up, out of the killing cold. I lay on the metal, shaking so violently I thought my bones would break. I still had the tracker. I fumbled with it, my fingers numb. Turning it over, I pressed the activation sequence. A tiny pinprick blue light flashed once, then twice. It was alive. It was pinging my location to a private server at Luminark. They would find me. The Coast Guard. My own company's emergency response. They would find the signal. I found the strap from the useless vest, the one I'd torn off in the water. I tied my wrist to the iron stanchion of the buoy. I would not be washed away again. I waited. I waited for 1 hour, then 2. The storm raged, peaked, and began to ease. The sky turned from pure black to a bruised, sickening purple. No one came. The signal was out. I knew it was. So where were they? I didn't know then what I learned from Iris's investigation. I didn't know that the secondary radio on the yacht wasn't the only thing sabotaged. My personal beacon, the one I held in my hand, was programmed to ping on an emergency frequency, but Tyler, in his security coordination, had filed a false equipment manifest for my yacht. The equipment change he'd registered had shifted the expected frequency of all my personal devices. My beacon was pinging at 406.05 megahertz. The world's rescue satellites were listening for 406.00. A shift of 0.5 megahertz, a tiny technical detail, a rounding error. He had made me invisible. I was screaming for help, and he had put me on mute. The buoy was not anchored. It was a channel marker, designed to drift with the tide. It was being pulled, slowly, south. I must have passed out. The cold, the head wound, the exhaustion. When I woke, the sun was a hot, white glare. My skin was burning, my mouth was cracked, and the buoy was bumping rhythmically against rocks. I looked up. I saw a white tower, a lighthouse, Ashmere Light. A figure was standing on the rocks, a rope in her hand, May Corbett. She looked at me, at the ruined vest, at my bleeding head. She didn't shout. She just started coiling the rope. "Well," she said, her voice like gravel, "you look like hell. Let's get you inside." She saved me. She stitched the gash on my head with a fishing hook and sterilized line. She forced hot broth into me. She covered me in wool blankets. And I slept. But I didn't rest. My sleep was a new kind of storm. It was a loop. The dark, short shadow on the deck, the sound of the rubber boot, the whine of the failing winch, and over it all, Kellen's voice, not from the intercom, but from his text message the night before. "Tomorrow. Let's just relax. Let's just relax." The loop would play, over and over, until I woke up, my heart hammering, my hand clutching a fistful of May's wool blanket, the shadow, the text, relax. On the third morning, I woke before dawn. The nightmare had passed. There was only a cold, quiet certainty. I stood at the window of the lighthouse, watching the sun rise. May was right. The ones who smile too easy, Kellen, Tyler, my parents. They were at home, in Greyport. They were performing grief. They were talking to lawyers. They were waiting for the 7-day mark, when the Coast Guard would officially declare me lost at sea. They were waiting for my death certificate, the key to my kingdom. I could call the police. I could use May's phone. Call the Coast Guard. Tell them I was alive. And what? I would be a victim, a traumatized, hysterical woman. Kellen would say I was confused, that the storm had addled my brain. He would say Donnelly was a hero, a technician who tried to save me. They would wrap me in blankets and sympathy, and his lawyers would wrap me in litigation and doubt, until they could prove I was incompetent, unstable. They had built a story. Tragic Vanessa Hunter, lost to the sea. I looked at my reflection in the thick lighthouse glass. The woman looking back was not tragic. She was not lost. She was raw. She was cold. And she was, for the first time, completely free. All the old attachments, the guilt that bound me to my parents, the weakness that made me protect Tyler, the desperate need for connection that made me trust Kellen, they had all been ripped away by the storm. The ocean had scoured me clean. They wanted me dead. Fine, I would be dead. I made a vow. Right there, as the sun broke the horizon, a promise to the woman in the glass. If I return, I will not be a victim. I will be a witness. If I return, I will not be asking for what is mine. I will be taking it. I survived, and no one will ever feed on my body again. The evidence was a missile. I told Iris, but a missile is useless if the target has already moved. We had to freeze them in place. They aren't just greedy, Vanessa. They're impatient, Iris said, her voice sharp over our secure line. We were 48 hours from the hearing. Kellen's lawyers will file for an emergency probate sale the second the judge recognizes his claim. They'll argue the market is volatile and the estate must be protected. He could sell Luminark out from under you before you even take the stand. So we stop the sale, I said. We stop everything. Iris drafted the first document, an emergency injunction, a temporary restraining order to be filed under seal, prohibiting any transfer, sale, or leveraging of any shares of Luminark Labs by any party. I'll file this at midnight, the night before the hearing, she said. The judge will see it before court opens. It will give them zero time to react. They'll walk in thinking they own the bank, only to find the vault is already sealed. The second document was more subtle. They will call you an imposter, she warned. They'll say you're a fraud. They'll say it's grief, trauma. They'll have a dozen psychiatrists ready to testify that you're unstable. We cannot let them define the terms of your identity. She drafted a second motion, a request for expedited identity verification. It stipulated that the identity of Vanessa Hunter, should she appear, could only be verified by a specific, non-negotiable, multi-factor process, full biometrics, dental records, and a specific medical identifier, the hairline scar on my left wrist, the result of a cycling accident when I was 19, a scar Kellen had kissed 100 times. We were defining the key before they could change the lock. While Iris built the legal cage, I focused on the stakeholders. Kellen had been acting CEO for 2 months. The board was nervous. They were being fed a diet of lies. I had to introduce doubt. Using my VH persona from the Deep Access server, I sent a new encrypted email to the 3 largest non-family shareholders. The message was one sentence. Do not sign any proxies or agreements before the Cypress County hearing on date X. A full data packet is pending. It was just enough. It wouldn't make them loyal, but it would make them pause. It would make them doubt Kellen's authority. In a game of chess, paralysis is a victory. But we needed more. We have their past crimes, I said to Iris, pacing my small hotel room. We have the money, the technician, the insurance, but that's all historical. I want their present intent. I want them on tape, now. Greed makes people sloppy, Iris said, and they're about to inherit hundreds of millions of dollars. They're drowning in greed. Let's give them a reason to be sloppy. We designed the bait. It was a work of art, a beautifully crafted email, appearing to originate from a fictitious offshore mediation firm. The mediator, a Dr. Aries, was supposedly hired by a secret coalition of Luminark board members deeply concerned about the upcoming power vacuum. The email was a preliminary settlement memo. It proposed a peaceful, private, 4-way split of the assets, but with a significant portion, 60%, being held in a long-term trust, managed by the board, to ensure the stability of the company. It's the trust part that will trigger him, I said. Kellen doesn't want a split. He wants it all, and he wants it now. He won't be able to resist clarifying his dominance. We sent the email at 3 p.m., addressed to Kellen, Tyler, and my parents' legal counsel. We didn't have to wait long. 11 minutes. Kellen replied in 11 minutes. He didn't reply all. He replied only to Dr. Aris, our fictitious mediator. His response was pure, undiluted arrogance. This proposal is both unacceptable and naive. My claim as the primary beneficiary is absolute and non-negotiable. If this board coalition wishes to discuss a real partnership, one that respects my authority, I am available. Tonight, 7 p.m., Vireo House. Vireo House, a dark, expensive bar in the financial district, famous for its privacy, its high-backed booths, and its terrible cell service, the perfect place for a conspiracy. He's ours, Iris said. I have an operative who can be at that bar in 30 minutes. By the time Kellen arrives, he will be sitting at a wired table. Iris's operative was a former signals intelligence expert, a woman who specialized in corporate counter-espionage. By 6 p.m., a high-fidelity microphone, no larger than a grain of rice, was embedded in the heavy bronze base of the table lamp in Kellen's preferred booth. At 7:15 p.m., I was in my hotel room, a headset on, listening. Iris was on the other line, recording everything. Kellen's voice came through, smooth and confident. He was speaking to Iris's operative, who was posing as a broker representing the concerned board members. "Look, let's be blunt," Kellen said, the sound of ice clinking in his glass. "The probate hearing is a formality. The proxy is ironclad. My grief is, frankly, unassailable. The judge will sign off. Once he does, I'm liquidating." The operative murmured something about the company's long-term value. "I don't care about the value," Kellen snapped, his voice dropping. "I care about the speed. This company, this life, it's a prison. As soon as the estate is settled, I sell. I will sell Luminark for 50 cents on the dollar if I have to. I just want out. I want the cash, and I want to be on a beach, far away from all this." I closed my eyes. Got him. But the trap wasn't finished. It snapped shut 2 minutes later. Kellen's phone must have buzzed. I heard him shift. A pause. "I have to go," he said abruptly. His tone had changed. He was no longer confident. He was spooked. "What happened?" Iris asked in my ear. I was already working. He received a text. I'm pulling it from his cloud backup now. "Tyler. It's from Tyler." The message populated my screen. It was from Tyler to Kellen. I read it aloud to Iris. "Shut your mouth. That place is crawling with cameras. You're getting reckless." There was a long, sharp silence on the line. "My God," Iris breathed. "It's not just a smoking gun. Vanessa, it's an active shooter situation. That text is proof of an ongoing conspiracy. He's not just a past accomplice. He's an active co-conspirator. He's advising Kellen on how to avoid detection. We have them both. We have them cold." While Kellen was imploding at the bar, my parents were across town, signing their own death warrant. Iris's investigator, monitoring their lawyer's office, sent the confirmation. At 7:30 p.m., Gordon and Elaine Hunter signed the final paperwork for their predatory, high-interest bridge loan. The contract was explicit. Repayment in full was due in 90 days, secured only by the anticipated inheritance of Luminark shares. They had officially, legally, bet their entire lives on my death. "The board is set," I said. "And the judge just approved the temporary injunction," Iris said, an email alert pinging. "Filed under seal, as of right now, no one can sell a single share of your company. They are trapped in the room with you. They just don't know it." We finalized the attack plan. The 7 files we had built were organized into 3 master packages, labeled with courtroom simplicity. Package A, authentication. This was my identity. The biometrics, the medical records, the affidavit from May Corbett, the high-resolution photo of the scar on my wrist. This would be presented first. Package B, the financials. This was the money trail. Cobalt Finch, Rafe Donnelly, the fraudulent insurance policy, the parents' loan agreement. Package C, the conspiracy. This was the payload. The full, unedited recording from Vireo House, the text message from Tyler, the satellite photos of Donnelly's van, the forged proxy analysis from Dr. Thorne. We needed one last piece, the fake will. How did Kellen plan to introduce it? Daniel Chavez, my internal auditor, delivered the final key. "I recovered the security logs from your penthouse." His message read, "As requested, the private safe in your home office. It was opened at 1:17 a.m., the night before your trip. It was accessed using Kellen Royce's fingerprint." Of course, he didn't need my lifted print. He had shared access to that safe. He didn't just access my safe after I was gone. He accessed it before I left. He wasn't just planning to plant the fake will. He was removing my real one. "So that's the detonation," I said to Iris. "We don't lead with the conspiracy. We let them present their case." "Exactly," Iris said. Her voice was cold, precise. "We let Kellen's lawyer stand up and present the forged proxy. We let him perjure himself. We let my parents' lawyer present their claim. We let Tyler present his. We let them build their entire house of cards on the foundation of that forgery. We let them commit the crime, right there, in front of the judge." And then, I said, looking at the 3 sealed packages on my desk, I walk in, hand the judge package C, and I pull the pin. The morning of the hearing, the sky over Grayport was a flat, indifferent gray, but the steps of the Cypress County Superior Court were a feeding frenzy. I was parked 2 blocks away in a nondescript rental car, watching on a live news feed on my laptop. The media was out in full force. At least 6 satellite trucks were parked on the street, their masts raised. Reporters I recognized from the financial news networks were jostling for position, their microphones held out like weapons. "We are live from the Cypress County Courthouse," a reporter was saying, "where the probate hearing for the estate of tech billionaire Vanessa Hunter is set to begin in 30 minutes. This has become one of the most contentious probate battles in recent state history, pitting Hunter's husband, her parents, and her brother against each other for control of the multi-billion-dollar data security firm, Luminarch Labs." The camera panned over the crowd. "And Brian," the reporter continued, her voice hushed with manufactured importance, "we are hearing rumors. A source close to the Luminarch board has indicated that a significant, unforeseen development is expected this morning. We don't know what that means, but the atmosphere here is electric." My anonymous message, VH, had worked. I had thrown a rock into the hornet's nest, and now they were all buzzing, looking for the threat. A black town car pulled up, the first to arrive. My parents, Gordon and Elaine Hunter. They emerged from the car as if stepping onto a red carpet. My mother was dressed in a custom-made black suit, her makeup perfect, a single strand of pearls at her throat. My father was in his best dark gray suit, his expression a carefully rehearsed mask of solemn responsibility. They were flanked by 2 lawyers, looking like the grieving, dignified elders of a dynasty. They didn't look at the press. They were above it. They were here to claim what was owed for their investment. 10 minutes later, Tyler arrived. He came in a cab, a clear sign of his diminished status in the new hierarchy. He almost tripped getting out. He was carrying a briefcase so thick it looked like it was about to burst. He clutched it with both hands, his knuckles white. He attempted a smile for the cameras, a weak, watery grimace that looked more like a plea for help. He was sweating, even in the cool morning air. He looked like what he was, a man in over his head, about to commit a federal crime. Then, the main event. A gleaming black Bentley rolled to a stop. The driver opened the door, and Kellen Royce emerged. He was a masterpiece of performative grief. He wore a charcoal gray suit, perfectly tailored, and a somber, deep blue tie. His dark hair was perfect. He paused at the top of the steps, letting the cameras capture his pained, noble profile. He looked like a man crushed by the weight of his tragic loss. But I wasn't looking at his suit. I was looking at his eyes. Even on the laptop feed, I could see it. They were not the eyes of a grieving widower. They were the eyes of a gambler on the last hand of the night. They were electric with adrenaline, scanning the crowd, the building, the street. And he kept glancing, almost imperceptibly, at the courthouse doors. He was not just expectant. He was nervous. He was waiting for the final card to be dealt. But a small part of him, the part that knew what he had done, was terrified of what it might be. I closed the laptop. It was time. I walked the 2 blocks, my baseball cap pulled low, the simple, dense document tube in my hand. I entered the courthouse through a side entrance, bypassing the media circus. Iris was waiting for me in the hallway outside Department 4B, as planned. She was a picture of calm, dressed in a sharp navy suit, her own briefcase at her feet. "They're all inside," she said, her voice quiet. "The shareholders are in the gallery. The judge is on the bench. They're just getting started." "The injunction?" I asked. "Filed and sealed by the judge at 8:01 a.m. He's the only one who knows. As of this second, Luminarch is frozen. They're fighting over an empty box." "Good." I stood next to her, my back against the wall, listening. We were around the corner, invisible, but the acoustics of the old building carried every word. First, my parents' lawyer. "A lifetime of investment. Gordon and Elaine Hunter did not just raise a brilliant daughter, they created the environment for her success. Their claim is one of moral and familial right, a significant share to honor the foundation they built. Then, Tyler's lawyer. His entire adult life in service to his sister's vision. Tyler Hunter is the institutional memory of Luminarch. He is the only one with the marketing and internal savvy to keep the company stable during this transition. He is here to protect his sister's legacy from outside interests. Then, Harrison, Kellen's lead counsel, his voice smooth and commanding. The law is clear. Your Honor, the bond of marriage is the primary bond. Kellen Royce is the grieving widower, the man who stood by her, supported her. His rights as her surviving spouse supersede all other claims. He is here not just as her husband, but as her chosen executor. This was the moment. And to that end, Your Honor, Harrison continued, his voice rising, we present this, a binding emergency proxy authorization, signed by Vanessa Hunter herself, 2 days before her tragic trip. It grants Kellen Royce full authority over her shares in the event of her absence or incapacity. It proves her intent. I heard the murmur in the courtroom, the shareholders. Furthermore, Harrison said, this proxy is supported by her known wishes, her will, to leave her husband as the steward of her life's work. She trusted him. She chose him. A beat of silence. Then the judge's voice, dry and impatient. Thank you. Counselors, I have received the submitted documents from all 3 parties. I must say, this is a highly irregular probate hearing, convened with extreme prejudice. Before I examine the legality of this emergency proxy, I will need order. The clerk will. That was my cue. I looked at Iris. She nodded once. I rounded the corner. I put my hand on the heavy wooden door. I pushed. The door swung open with a heavy, expensive whoosh. I wrote in the outline that the sound in the room was cut off, but that is not a strong enough word. The sound died. It was as if the vacuum of space had suddenly filled the room. The shuffling of papers, the coughing, the whispers, the air conditioning unit, it all ceased to exist. I took one step in, then another. I let the door swing shut behind me with a solid, echoing thud. The first to see me were the journalists in the back row. Their eyes went wide. One of them, a young woman with a press badge, dropped her phone. It clattered loudly on the wooden floor. A camera flash went off. A single, blinding explosion of light. Then a man's voice, a reporter from the Gazette, sharp and disbelieving. Impossible! The gallery was a sea of confused, turning heads. The Luminarch shareholders, the men and women I had built my company with, were frozen, their mouths open. Then the tables. My father, Gordon. He was looking at the judge, annoyed by the interruption. He turned his head. His eyes met mine. The blood drained from his face. He didn't look shocked. He looked nullified, as if he had been erased. My mother, Elaine, her hand, the one holding a designer leather-bound notepad, began to shake, a violent, uncontrollable tremor. The pen fell from her fingers. Tyler, he was already looking at the door. His nerves shot. When he saw me, he made a sound, a short, sharp gasp. He tried to stand up, pushing his chair back, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. He stood halfway, in a crouch, his hands gripping the table, his entire body shaking. And Kellen? He was the last to turn. He was smiling, listening to a whisper from his lawyer. Harrison. He turned his head slowly, annoyed by the interruption, his eyes full of impatience. He saw me. He recognized me. The color didn't just drain from his face, it was ripped away. His eyes, the eyes I had loved, the eyes that had watched me fall into the sea, widened in a way I will never forget. It was not shock. It was not disbelief. It was the pure, absolute, existential terror of a man seeing a ghost walk out of the grave he had personally dug. He tried to speak. A sound came out of his mouth, a dry van. He pushed his chair back, a violent, scraping sound. He tried to stand, perhaps to run. He knocked his chair over. He took one step back, his hand clawing at his chest, at the somber blue tie. He was reeling, stumbling, his body disconnected from his brain. His legs gave out. He didn't just faint, he collapsed. He fell sideways, hitting the heavy counsel table with a sickening crack, scattering legal pads and a carafe of water. Then he slid, boneless, to the floor, a crumpled pile of expensive charcoal gray wool. The courtroom exploded. People screamed. A bailiff shouted, "Order! Order in the court!" Harrison, Kellen's lawyer, just stared, his mouth wide open. I did not look at any of them. I did not look at my parents, or my brother, or the man convulsing on the floor. I looked directly at the judge. I held up the document tube in my hand. I took a breath. My voice was calm, clear, and carried across the entire chaotic room. Your Honor, my name is Vanessa Hunter. I am alive, and I am carrying evidence. The courtroom was a bedlam. 2 bailiffs were crouched over Kellen, who was conscious but incoherent, his eyes wide and vacant. My mother was openly weeping, a harsh, ugly sound. Tyler was frozen in his half-standing crouch, his face the color of ash. The journalists in the back were shouting, their phones held high, recording everything. Judge Thornton slammed his gavel, the sound cracking like a gunshot. Order! Order in this court! Bailiffs, remove Mr. Royce to the anteroom. Counselors, control your clients. Ms. Vale, approach the bench. And you, he pointed the gavel at me. You will approach with her, now. Iris was already moving. I followed her, my heels clicking on the marble floor. I placed the document tube on the judge's bench. Harrison, Kellen's lawyer, was on his feet, his face crimson. Your Honor, this is a circus. This is a psychological tactic. We have no proof this is Vanessa Hunter. This is a fraud, an imposter, Then your first order of business, Mr. Harrison, is to disprove this, Iris said, her voice cutting through his panic. She opened her briefcase and handed the judge the file labeled Package A. Your Honor, I said, my voice clear. I am Vanessa Hunter. My identity is not a matter of opinion. It is a matter of data. Iris directed the judge. In that file, you will find my client's full biometric profile. You will find her complete dental records, submitted by her personal physician, Dr. Alistair Finch, who is present in this courtroom, and you will find a specific medical identifier. I stepped closer. Pulling up the sleeve of my left blazer, I held my wrist out to the judge. On May 12, 1999, I had a cycling accident. It required 17 stitches. The scar begins here. I traced the thin white line. And ends here. Dr. Finch's report confirms its location, length, and texture. Judge Thornton looked at my wrist, then at the file. He looked up at a man in the gallery. Dr. Finch? Dr. Finch stood, a nervous-looking man in a bow tie. It is her, Your Honor. 100%. That is Vanessa Hunter. This court, the judge said, his eyes scanning the room, accepts the identity of Ms. Vanessa Hunter. She is present. She is alive. He looked at the 3 legal teams, his face a mask of thunder, which makes the nature of this probate hearing utterly fraudulent, and I want to know, immediately, who is responsible. Harrison was already backtracking. Your Honor, this is a miracle, a wonderful, joyous miracle. My client, Mr. Royce, clearly fainted from the overwhelming shock and relief. We joyfully withdraw our petition. Not so fast. Mr. Harrison, Iris said. She had already opened the document tube. You just presented this court with an emergency proxy authorization. You claimed it was proof of my client's intent, but my client did not sign that document. She pulled out a thick bound report and placed it before the judge. Package B, Your Honor. This is the full forensic analysis from Dr. Elias Thorne of the Norwin Forensic Penmanship Institute. That is my client's signature, Harrison protested weakly. It is a masterful forgery, Iris countered, her voice cold as steel. But Dr. Thorne found the tremor of execution. If you'll turn to page 3, Your Honor, you'll see the high magnification analysis of the final stroke. The R in Hunter. It was not written. It was drawn. Furthermore, the ink, while a matching color, is from a different manufacturing batch than the pen Ms. Hunter was known to use, a pen which, by chance, we recovered from her yacht. This is absurd conjecture. It is science, Iris said. But let's talk about timing. The document you submitted is dated and time-stamped at 1:37 a.m., the night before my client sailed. You claim she signed it in a moment of foresight. She produced another file. Funny, then, that we have the security logs from Ms. Hunter's home safe, the one she shared with Mr. Royce. It was accessed at exactly 1:37 a.m., not by Ms. Hunter, who was on her yacht, but by Mr. Kellen Royce. He was not receiving a document. Your Honor, he was planting one. And what else was he doing? I spoke, my voice quiet, but it carried. He was removing my actual legal will, and we know what he planned to replace it with. Iris handed the judge the next file. Recovered from the deleted cache of your own law firm's server, Mr. Harrison, a draft of a new last will and testament, in Ms. Hunter's name, dated the day after her disappearance. It leaves 80% of Luminarch to Kellen, 10% to Tyler, and 10% to her parents. Harrison looked as if I had physically struck him. He was speechless. But a forgery is just paper, Iris continued, her rhythm accelerating. What about the motive? Let's discuss the life insurance policy, the one Mr. Royce held on my client. She produced the document. Raised from $50 million to $200 million, signed and authorized, using a forged digital signature, just 12 days before the accident. Mr. Royce was betting $200 million that my client would not return from that trip. The courtroom was silent. The air was thick and toxic. But even that wasn't enough, Iris said, turning to Tyler. He wanted the company, Package C, Your Honor, a full financial schematic. She unrolled a large flowchart, placing it on an easel. It was my money trail. Aurelian Bank, an offshore account controlled by Mr. Royce. From there, $250,000 was funneled into a shell corporation, Cobalt Finch, LLC. And where did that money go? Into the anonymous digital wallet of a man named Rafe Donnelly, a marine technician who specializes in unsanctioned modifications. My brother Tyler made a small, choking sound. And how, Iris asked the room, did Mr. Donnelly get access to my client's private, lockdown yacht? He had a temporary technician's pass, authorized and issued by Mr. Tyler Hunter, in his capacity as head of marketing. Tyler slumped in his chair, putting his head in his hands. This, Your Honor, was their past, their conspiracy to commit murder, but we also have their present. Iris placed a small digital audio player on the bench. 2 nights ago, my client and I staged a bait email, proposing a settlement. Mr. Royce, believing he was meeting a board representative, met an operative of my firm at the Vireo House bar. This is his recorded statement. Iris pressed play. Kellen's voice filled the courtroom, smooth, arrogant, and utterly chilling. As soon as the estate is settled, I sell. I will sell Luminarch for 50 cents on the dollar if I have to. I just want out. The judge's face was white. Iris pressed stop. And lest we believe Mr. Hunter was not an active part of this ongoing fraud, she continued, here is the text message he sent Mr. Royce during that meeting. She displayed the image of the text on a tablet. Shut your mouth. That place is crawling with cameras. You're getting reckless. And finally, Iris said, turning to my parents, the rest of the family, who, at that exact same time, were signing the final documents for a predatory bridge loan. She submitted the contract. A loan contingent on, and I quote, the successful and timely receipt of the anticipated inheritance of Luminarch shares. They were leveraging my client's corpse before it was even cold. My mother's wail was a raw, animal sound. My father just stared at his hands. Their lawyer was frantically reading his own copy of the loan, his face aghast. "This was not an accident," I said, stepping forward. I placed the final report on the judge's bench. "This is the independent technical analysis of my gear. It confirms the seam of my life vest was sliced with a hot blade. It confirms my emergency beacon frequency was manually offset by 0.5 megahertz, a shift that made me invisible to every rescue satellite on Earth." The room was in ruins. The lawyers for all three parties were standing, shouting, objecting to things that had been said 10 minutes ago. It was pure chaos. Judge Thornton rose to his feet. "Silence," he roared. "Silence!" The room fell quiet. "Bailiff," he commanded, "seize the cell phones of Mr. Kellen Royce and Mr. Tyler Hunter immediately. They are to be impounded as evidence. Mr. Harrison, you and your clients are ordered not to leave this courtroom." He turned to me. His anger was gone, replaced by a cold, formal gravity. "Ms. Hunter, you have the floor. What is it you are asking this court to do?" I stood in the center of the wreckage of my family. I looked at my parents, my brother, and the doorway where my husband had been dragged. "Your Honor," I said, my voice steady, "I am asking for two things. First, an immediate and summary dismissal, with prejudice, of all petitions related to my estate. Second, I formally request that this entire file, including the evidence my counsel has presented, be immediately transferred from this probate court to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation into conspiracy, insurance fraud, and attempted murder." Judge Thornton called for a 30-minute recess. It was a procedural necessity, a moment for the court to absorb the blast, for the criminal investigators to be summoned, and for the legal teams to prepare for the inevitable. The courtroom didn't empty. No one was allowed to leave. The doors were guarded. The three warring tribes, my parents, my brother, and my husband's legal team, were now prisoners in their separate, invisible cages, forced to marinate in the consequences of their actions. I stood with Iris near the windows, our backs to the room. The gray light of the Grayport sky felt cool on my face. The silence in the room was louder than the chaos had been. It was a thick, pressurized silence, full of ruined futures. "The district attorney's office is sending 2 investigators," Iris said quietly, looking at her phone. "They'll be here in 20 minutes. They will likely take statements, then arrest Kellen and Tyler on the spot, based on your testimony and the evidence." I nodded, saying nothing. I watched a seagull land on the window ledge, look at me, and then fly away. A shuffling sound behind me. Slow, hesitant footsteps. Vanessa. It was my father, Gordon. I turned slowly. He was standing about 10 feet away, his hands fluttering at his sides. His face was a ruin. The mask of the dignified patriarch was gone, replaced by the slack, terrified expression of an old man who had just lost everything. "Vanessa," he stammered, taking a small step closer. We didn't know about the boat. We didn't know he was—" He couldn't say it. He couldn't say trying to kill you. "The loan," he floundered. "Elaine's medical bills. We thought you were gone. Van, we just thought You thought you were rich," I said. My voice was flat, devoid of heat. "You thought your investment had finally paid out." "No," he said, a pathetic spark of his old self. "It wasn't like that. I'm your father." He took another step. He used the word from a language we had barely spoken in our house, the language of our heritage, the one he and my mother had shed in their desperate quest to be seen as purely American, purely successful. He was trying to access a part of me that he himself had taught me to bury. I turned my back to him. I faced the window again. I heard him stop breathing. I heard him stand there for a full 30 seconds. Then, I heard the sound of his polished, expensive shoes scuffing the floor as he turned and walked back to his chair. A moment later, There was a different sound. A clatter. A sharp click on the marble floor. I glanced over. It was my mother, Elaine. She had dropped her lipstick, a bright, blood-red tube. It had rolled away from her feet. She was bent over, trying to pick it up, but her hands were shaking so violently she couldn't grasp it. Her perfect makeup was streaked with black tears. Her hair, so perfectly coiffed, was coming undone. This was the woman who had once told me that chipped nail polish was a sign of a failed mind. Now, she was just an old woman, trembling, her elegance shattered, her armor gone, exposed on a courtroom floor. She finally managed to grab the lipstick, clutching it in her fist like a talisman. She didn't try to speak to me. She just sat down, rocking back and forth, a low moan coming from her throat. "Ms. Hunter?" It was Tyler's lawyer, a young, frantic man. "Ms. Hunter, Mr. Hunter would like... He needs to speak with you, privately, for just 1 minute. He says he can explain." "No," Iris said, stepping in front of me, a human shield. "Absolutely not. Any and all communication from your client will be on the record and in the presence of his legal counsel. Is that clear?" "He has information," the lawyer pleaded. "He wants to cooperate." "Then he can cooperate with the district attorney," Iris said, dismissing him. From across the room, I heard a different commotion. A door to the anteroom opened. Kellen's voice, not smooth, not charming, but a raw, panicked bark. "I need my phone. You can't... I have to call my lawyer. Harrison, get in here. Get them off me." A police officer, not a bailiff, appeared in the doorway. "Sir, you need to remain seated. Your devices are being held." "You have no right," Kellen screamed. "I am the victim here. She's lying. She's unstable." The officer just closed the door, cutting off the sound. Kellen was awake. He was no longer the tragic widower. He was just a cornered animal. A new group approached, this time from the gallery. It was Mark Spengler and Julia Croft, two of the largest shareholders in Luminark. They were not family. They were investors. They looked pale but determined. "Vanessa," Mark said, his voice low. "My God, we are so glad you are safe. It's a miracle." "Thank you, Mark, Julia," I nodded. "But Vanessa," Julia cut in, her eyes all business. "We have a problem, a massive one. The markets are going to open in an hour. When this, she gestured to the entire courtroom, hits the wires. Our stock is going to go off a cliff. Attempted murder? The CEO? The COO? The founder's family? This is a governance nightmare." "We need stability," Mark said. "Immediately. We need a statement. We need you to reassure the markets. We need you to take control, right now, before we lose $10 billion in value." Oh. They were supportive, but their support was transactional. They were right. "You'll have it," I said. "Before the market opens, I will be making a full statement." They nodded, relieved, and stepped back to their seats. Iris and I were alone again. The courtroom was a tableau of despair. My father, staring at his hands. My mother, rocking. Tyler, his head down. His lawyer whispering frantically in his ear. "You can end this, Vanessa," Iris said, her voice soft, pulling me from the wreckage. I looked at her. "What do you mean?" "The district attorney is coming. You are the victim. Your word, combined with that evidence, will send Kellen and Tyler to prison for a very long time, 20 years, maybe more. Conspiracy to commit, attempted murder, insurance fraud. It's a mountain." She paused. "But your parents, it's more complicated. They are co-conspirators in the fraud. The loan agreement is damning. But did they know about the murder plot? It's ambiguous. You could choose to leave them out of the criminal complaint. Focus on the probate fraud. Let them be ruined financially, but perhaps save them from prison." I stared at the back of my father's head, the man who had demanded repayment for my childhood, the woman who had seen my ambition as a commodity. "You can push them all into the fire," Iris said. "They deserve it. No one would blame you. But the psychological price of sending your own parents to prison, it is not light. I thought of May Corbett. I thought of her at the Ashmere light, her face like a map. I remembered what she'd said to me, her voice gravelly as she stitched my head. "The ocean tried to kill you," she'd said, "but it spit you back out. You survived. Now you have to live on. Don't waste your second chance just winning the last fight. Use it to build a better shore. Survive to live on, not just to win." Justice, or responsibility, what was the difference? Kellen and Tyler were simple. They were a corruption. They had to be purged. They had tried to end my life. For them, there was no mercy, only the cold, clean logic of the law. But my parents, they were a different kind of poison, a slow-acting, lifelong dose of conditional love and toxic pragmatism. They had not tried to kill me. They had simply, cheerfully, prepared to profit from it. Did they deserve prison? Yes. Did I need them to go to prison? I thought of the company, Luminarch, my real child. It was bleeding. It was about to face the worst crisis in its history. A company built on security and trust, whose core leadership was a nest of vipers. "I need to rebuild," I said, thinking aloud. Luminarch is compromised from top to bottom. Tyler's entire marketing department, all the people he hired, his friends, they're part of the rot, the nepotism. I have to clean house. I have to reset the entire control system. You can't do that from a witness stand, day after day, in a 5-year-long family trial, Iris said, reading my thoughts. It will consume you. I made a decision. It was not about forgiveness. I would never forgive them. It was not about mercy. It was about triage. "Kellen and Tyler," I said, my voice hard. "We give the DA everything. We push for the full weight, attempted murder, everything." "And Gordon and Elaine?" Iris asked. "We leave them to the civil courts," I said. "The loan agreement is public. They are bankrupt. They will be disgraced. They will lose the house I bought them. They will lose everything. That is enough. My fight with them is over. My fight for my company is just beginning." Iris nodded, a look of profound respect in her eyes. "A clean cut? Good." I pulled out my phone. I opened a file I had drafted the night before, a press statement. I read it over. It was short. It was cold. It was precise. "I am grateful to be alive. The events of the last 2 months have been a profound personal tragedy. Today, that tragedy has become a legal matter, which will be handled by the District Attorney's Office. My focus, effective immediately, is on Luminarch Labs. I am reassuming my role as CEO. We will be conducting a full, top-to-bottom audit of all internal systems and personnel. There will be no further comment on the criminal matter. Our work is to restore integrity, and that work begins now. Not revenge, restoration. I knew the media would tear me apart. They would dig into my life, my marriage, my childhood, but there were parts of me they would never find. The nights I'd cried in the garage, terrified of failure, the deep, complicated love I'd once had for a charming man who sold me out, my time with May, those secrets would stay mine. I would protect myself. The doors at the back of the courtroom opened. 2 people, a man and a woman in dark suits, showed their badges to the bailiff, the district attorney's office. The recess was over. I took a deep breath. I was ready for the final act. I was ready to break the knot, not just for the past, but for the future. "This court is back in session." Judge Thornton's voice boomed, silencing the room. The 2 DA investigators were standing near the bailiff, their presence a tangible weight. After a review of the evidence presented by counsel, the judge continued, his eyes fixed on the 3 defense tables. "This court makes the following declarations. First, the court verifies, to an absolute and indisputable standard, the identity of the woman present. This is Ms. Vanessa Hunter." He paused, letting the finality of the statement land. "Therefore, all petitions for probate, all claims against the estate of Vanessa Hunter, and all motions to divide the assets of Luminarch Labs, as filed by Mr. Kellen Royce, Mr. Tyler Hunter, and Mr. and Mrs. Gordon Hunter are summarily dismissed, with prejudice. A collective gasp went up from the gallery. Furthermore, the judge said, his voice dropping into a dangerous register, this court issues an immediate temporary restraining order, freezing all known personal and corporate assets of Mr. Kellen Royce and Mr. Tyler Hunter, pending a full criminal investigation. Your Honor! Harrison, Kellen's lawyer, leaped to his feet. This is unprecedented. My client has not been charged with any. You are accepting slander and conjecture as. It is not conjecture, Mr. Harrison, Iris said, her voice cutting through his panic. And the district attorney's office has been extremely busy during our recess. They moved, at our request, on an emergency subpoena. As if on cue. A side door to the courtroom opened. 2 uniformed officers entered, and between them was a man in handcuffs, looking pale and terrified. He was short, stocky, and wearing technician's overalls. That, Iris announced, is Rafe Donnelly. Kellen, who had been brought back to his table, shot to his feet. I don't know who that is. Mr. Donnelly was apprehended 1 hour ago at the Grayport Marina, Iris said. Attempting to load his van onto a transport ferry, he was cooperative. One of the DA investigators stepped forward. Mr. Donnelly, please look around this courtroom. Do you see the man who paid you? Rafe Donnelly's eyes darted around the room, wide with terror. He locked onto Kellen. He raised a cuffed hand and pointed. That's him, he choked out. That's Mr. Royce. He paid me. He paid me $250,000. He said he just wanted the winch to fail, to scare her. He said she wouldn't get hurt. He said it was just a domestic dispute. Liar, Kellen roared, lunging forward before a bailiff slammed him back into his chair. You're a liar. I've never seen you. He didn't just pay him, Your Honor, Iris said, her voice accelerating, the drumbeat getting faster. He had to get him on the boat. We have the supplemental log from the Grayport Marina Communications Tower. She placed the document before the judge. It confirms the manual override and frequency change to my client's personal emergency beacon. The 0.5 megahertz shift that made her invisible, that authorization, that override, was accomplished using an electronic security keycard. She paused, then turned to look directly at my brother. A keycard issued from the server in the Luminarc marketing department, a keycard assigned to and used by Mr. Tyler Hunter. Tyler let out a high-pitched sound, a thin, whistling keen, like a dying animal. He put his head on the table and began to sob, his whole body shaking. Your Honor. My father's lawyer was standing now, his face ashen. My clients, Gordon and Elaine Hunter, they are victims in this. They were misled by their son-in-law. They are elderly. They are grieving. They had no knowledge of any violence. They were simply protecting their financial interests. Is that so? Iris said, her voice soft, but it was the softest part of a steel blade. Were they protecting their interests when they signed this? She produced the final document, the bridge loan. We examined the addenda, Your Honor, the fine print. I direct your attention to Addendum B, Section 4. She projected it onto the overhead screen, the text glowing for the whole room to see. It is a kill clause. It states that in the event the primary asset, the Luminarc shares, cannot be transferred due to the, quote, reappearance of the living heir, the loan is immediately nullified. However, a $5 million penalty is immediately due. Iris turned from the screen to face my parents. They didn't just bet on my client's death. Your Honor, they bought an insurance policy against her resurrection. They knew it wasn't a simple accident. They knew there was a risk she was alive, and they signed anyway. They leveraged her life, coming or going. They just lost the bet. That was the end. My father, Gordon, seemed to deflate, all the air going out of him. My mother, Elaine, just stared blankly at the screen. The mask was gone. The sophisticated, pragmatic matriarch had vanished, leaving a hollow, greedy old woman in her place. They weren't being slandered, they were just, finally, illuminated. Judge Thornton looked at the three tables, at Kellen, wild-eyed and trapped, at Tyler, sobbing uncontrollably, at my parents, who were now just two gray, silent ghosts. His face was a mask of cold fury. This court finds sufficient evidence to proceed with a full criminal investigation into Kellen Royce and Tyler Hunter for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and intentional endangerment. Bailiffs, take Mr. Royce and Mr. Hunter into custody. Two bailiffs moved in, pulling Kellen and Tyler from their chairs, forcing their hands behind their backs. The click of the handcuffs was the loudest sound in the room. Kellen was fighting, twisting, his composure shattered. He was just a raw, terrified con man. He looked at me, his eyes pleading, desperate. "Vanessa, Van, please, it wasn't me. It was Tyler. He had the access. He pushed it. I love you, Van. I swear. I still love you." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had texted me to relax while he had a killer on my boat. I felt nothing. No anger, no pain, just a void. "I love the truth more, Kellen," I said. Tyler was a different story. He wasn't fighting. He was crumbling. He twisted, grabbing for Iris's sleeve. "Wait, please," he sobbed. I'll testify. I'll tell them everything. Kellen made me. He had debts. He threatened me. I'll make a deal. Just tell them I'll make a deal. Vanessa, please." Iris calmly removed his hand from her jacket. "Mr. Hunter, all negotiations regarding testimony are now under the sole authority of the district attorney. I suggest you speak to your lawyer." He was still pleading as they dragged him through the side door. The judge looked at me. The storm had passed. The wreckage was all that remained. "Ms. Hunter, is there any other business before this court?" I stood tall. "Yes, Your Honor. One final item. I ask the court to formally recognize my prenuptial agreement, dated August 14th, 2021. It stipulates that Luminarch Labs, its shares, and all its assets are my sole and separate property, not subject to any community property claims." Harrison, still standing, limp, by his empty table, whispered, "Objection." "Overruled," the judge snapped. "The agreement is valid. The court recognizes Ms. Hunter's sole and total ownership." He raised his gavel high. "This hearing is concluded. All probate claims are dismissed. The ownership and operational control of Luminarch Labs rests solely with Vanessa Hunter. All related fraudulent transactions are hereby voided. This court is adjourned." The gavel cracked down. Bang! It was over. The main courtroom doors were pulled open. The sound of the outside world, of the media, rushed in like a tidal wave. Shouts, questions, the blinding, percussive flash of dozens of cameras. "Ms. Hunter, Ms. Hunter. What happened in there? Is it true you're alive? Who tried to kill you, Vanessa?" I didn't look at my parents, who were being quietly escorted out a side exit by their lawyer, financially and socially ruined. I walked straight forward, Iris at my side. The flashes were a strobe light, turning the world into a series of fractured, silent images. I didn't stop until I reached the top of the courthouse steps, the wall of microphones and cameras blocking my path. A reporter I recognized from the Wall Street Journal shoved a microphone in my face. "Vanessa, what do you call this? What just happened? Is this justice? Is this revenge?" I looked directly into the nearest camera. I let the silence hang for 1, 2, 3 seconds. "There was no blood," I said, my voice carrying over the crowd. "Just law, and I just chose its side." I walked down the steps, past them all. I didn't look back. I left them to the noise, to the chaos. Behind me was the wreckage of my old life, a saved empire, and a group of people who would now face the true price of their greed. Thank you so much for listening. Let me know in the comments where you are listening from. Share your thoughts, And please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button, so this story can be heard by even more people.